Hi everyone, Kathy Beltran with Sacred Dance with Trance. I'm so excited to have Robin Foy, psychic researcher, investigating physical mediumship and physical phenomena. He's also one of the core members of the Skull experiments, and I'm so grateful to have him here sharing his unfoldment, everything that started this project for him, and also all the things that he's doing now. So I'm super excited. Everybody, Robin Foy.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my goodness. And I know that we are working on a time difference of 6 hours, and you're currently in Spain right now.
That's absolutely right, yes.
So what I wanted to talk about is I wanted everybody to know you more. I wanted them to understand your beginning. Like what started your path? How long have you been on this path? What catapulted you in this direction?
Well, as a child, I was always interested in ghost stories, etc. My parents sort of indulged me a little bit and bought me a few ghost books, some of which I still have amongst my collection of thousands of them now. I was always interested, but I really didn't get into it until 44 years ago. And then 44 years ago, I just had a feeling that I had to do something that I wasn't really doing exactly what I was here for. Mm-hmm. I had a feeling I had to do something to help other people throughout the world. Wasn't sure exactly what it was at that time, but within a very short space of time, about a couple of weeks, in fact, after having sort of declared this to the skies, if you like, I picked up a copy of a local newspaper, and in that local newspaper there was an advert for anybody interested in psychic research. And quite amazingly, this advert appeared to me to be in bold type, but I just had a feeling that I had to answer this. And so consequently, I sort of answered it, and it was a box number. And it turned out to be a chap who was running a physical circle in Leicester in the UK. This chap sort of said, well, yes, you can get in touch, you can come along and have an interview. So I thought, well, yeah, sort of nothing to lose. So I went along to his home. I was living about sort of 10 miles away at that time. And there must have been about 12 people there. It turned out he'd been running physical circles on and off for many, many years. Some of them had achieved a bit of phenomena, some hadn't. But he was a very, very good friend of a famous medium called Leslie Flint. I hadn't heard of Leslie at that time, but the long and the short of it was that after the interview, I thought, well, yes, this is quite decent. And he told about sort of 7 of the people that were there, actually, that he didn't think they'd be suitable for it. But 5 of us, he said, well, would you like to have a look at the room where we have our seances? And so I said, yes, absolutely fine. Now, this house of his stood about 300 yards away from a road, and on either side of this house it was detached. There was about 500 yards between the houses, and then at the back there was purely and simply a field. So it was a fairly isolated house. There was nothing immediately around it. But as the 5 of us sort of walked up the stairs to this seance room, which was actually, you had to go through his bedroom to get to it, and it was an extension over the garage. And as the 5 of us sort of walked in a crocodile up the stairs to see this place, I heard a voice in midair, and all the others heard it too. Basically what it was a baby crying. And I thought, well, that's a little bit odd, say the least. And I sort of said to him, look, have you got any babies in the house, etc., etc.? No, he hadn't got any babies in the house at all. And he said, well, if you've heard that and everybody's heard it, it's got to be a message for someone. Well, that was fair enough. We sort of went into this little extension that they'd got there. A fairly bare room, apart from the fact of a very, very old-fashioned record player he had in there, and the seats around the wall. But the seats were so tightly packed against the wall that nobody could have got behind or anything such as that. I sort of said, yeah, I'd be interested in joining on a regular basis, and it was arranged that I would go along on a weekly basis to sit in this circle. Well, that was fine. And then I actually went home And within a week of being there, we had my first wife and I had a telephone call from an adoption agency we'd applied to adopt. And the adoption agency said, "We've got a baby for you." And so that message, independent voice coming from midair, had actually been for me.
Wow.
I mean, that was quite emotional, obviously.
Yes.
And it so happened, so that's how my son ended up coming to us. And I was with that circle about 18 months in total, sitting there every week. But since this guy, his name was Elmer Brown, and he ran a sort of drapery shop fairly close to Leicester. In that circle, the first sitting I had there, I sat in the circle with my back to the wall, and within half an hour or so, a materialized finger prodded me in the back. And I thought, well, hang on, something's happening here. So I got more interested in it. Actually, it didn't sort of, it didn't make me scared or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady who was sitting next to me, she was a medium in a local spiritualist church, and she used to do the rounds with the churches. And she actually taught me about mental mediumship, because I knew absolutely nothing about clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience in the beginning. And I learned most of that from her. But I went straight into a physical circle. Wow. So I was experiencing phenomena in the very first week that I got involved. And then about sort of 2 months later, after I'd been in the circle, Elmer Brown was a very good friend of Leslie Flint's. And he used to take his group down there about twice a year to meet Leslie Flint and to have a sitting with him with a couple of months. And we actually went down to Leslie's. Now, that was really what hooked me. Because Leslie Flint was the most fantastic independent voice medium. And on and off, I knew him for many years after that, until his death. We were actually at his funeral, because at that time I was chairman of the Noah's Ark Society. Leslie, I think the first time we sat with Leslie, there must have been 15 spirit voices spoke. Some of them for a few moments, some of them for sort of 15 minutes. And we were there about 3 hours. And I came out of that seance thinking to myself, this is it. This is what I've got to do. Physical phenomena, physical mediumship. And that's where it all started.
I can't imagine being there with Leslie Flint, having this experience, hearing these voices. I mean, I'm sure, if I had heard that, I would have been right there too, going, saying, that's the direction I need to go. So I can't imagine that. I wanted to backtrack a little bit. I wanted to talk about, you have 2 books out that I know of.
Yes.
One I have here with me, which is The Skull.
Absolutely.
In Pursuit of Physical Mediumship. I always share this book out there. I also know that you have the Witnessing the Impossible. You have so many sites, great sites for people that need, that are interested in physical mediumship to join. I mean, you have the, which one is it? I'm trying to remember. The Physical Mediumship for You.
Yes, that's right. That's the main site that I have. It's a free site for anybody that wants to get information, a little bit of advice. They can always go on that site and ask for it. And I always try my best to help out. I think over the years, we've helped many, many circles all over the world to actually start sitting and getting phenomena. And so, that's a job well done, but it's only a very small part of the story, of course.
Yes.
And over the years, in between my first sitting in Leicester, Sandra and I, my second wife and I, have been in several physical circles. We started several, and we've experienced a tremendous amount of phenomena in all that time. Now, the book, In Pursuit of Physical Mediumship, was the first one that I wrote, and that is still available now from Amazon. Yes. It's the photograph on the front cover was one that I actually took at Skull, and it's a photograph of a spirit light shining out of the glass dome, and I took that with my camera actually on one occasion. That the spirit light stayed in the dome for 2 hours and moved round like a lighthouse beam for the whole of the 2 hours. That was quite amazing.
Yes, I can't even imagine seeing the things that you've seen. I don't have that personal experience, so I get to see it on videos or read about
Right.
it and
Yes.
see the pictures. So it's so exciting to have you here sharing all these things that you've seen and investigated. You talk about sitting with Leslie Flint. So many
Yes.
people are, they read about him and having that experience, these voices, all these voices that you heard at once. Can you explain a little bit about independent voice that was happening there?
Yes. Independent voice basically means that it's not done with a trumpet, which is another way of getting direct voice. But it means basically that spirit voices are speaking from midair, so that you can hear them, you can speak to them, and very often the medium, who was very much awake during these sittings, was able to join the conversation too.
That is amazing.
I mean, they were the real voices of spirit people, and if you listen to them and you were able to identify them as a parent or a brother or a sister or what have you, that they were their actual voices when they were alive. So, you'd recognize them instantly.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like such an amazing experience to have that happen. So you've been on this journey for now 44 years?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
44. What led you to the skull experiment? How did you get from your first experiment with getting that message about your future son coming to you to leading you
Yeah.
in that direction?
Well, I think purely and simply, it was all through experience. I mean, Sandra and I had various home circles for years. One of the problems we had, and one of the problems that a lot of circles have, is that people join the circle, but they don't really, they're not passionate about it. And in order to develop decent physical phenomena, you have to be totally dedicated. You have to be committed to it, and you have to be passionate about getting it. So you've got to stick in there, and you have to realize there's no instant solution to getting physical phenomena. You have to work a bit for it. And that means, you really have to sort of sit regularly on and off for anything up to sort of 2 or 3 years. In the old way, it could be 12 years. Leslie Flint took 12 years to develop his mediumship.
Wow.
That is an awful long time.
Yes.
But then again, he had the most fantastic mediumship, and he got the most evidential information from spirit. And that, I think, is the key to it all, because what we're all looking for is evidence. And if you get real evidence, then there's no way that you're not convinced. You're completely convinced. And people say to me after all this time, you've had so much experience of this, you must believe in the afterlife now. You must believe that life goes on. And I will say, no. And they look at me a bit gone out. And I say, I don't believe in it because I know it's the truth. And there's an awful lot of difference between believing in it and in it being the truth.
Wow. Yes, so that's amazing to me that, but you know what is true? To have that passion, that dedication, people can sit for a long time. You you talk about ectoplasm, and then
Yes.
you talk about new energy.
Well, it's not actually new, but it's different. There are two basic ways of being able to get physical phenomena. The traditional way is ectoplasm. And up until we actually started the Noah's Ark Society in 1990, which we did to actually rescue physical mediumship, because at that time it looked as though it was going to become extinct. Everybody seemed to believe that the only way that you could get physical phenomena was with ectoplasm. Well, we witnessed both ways. One of the very best mediums in the world at this moment in time is a really good friend of ours, a chap called Kai Muger, a German medium, and he is absolutely superb. I do think that as far as ectoplasmic mediums go, he probably is the world's best at the moment. He's getting full form materialization that are self-luminous and who speak for themselves.
Wow.
So Kai is on board with us in the Spiritual Science Foundation, which we've started. And to witness his ectoplasmic phenomena is quite amazing, because there hadn't been much ectoplasm about, quite honestly, sort of around about the 1990s, 1990 and onwards. And although Leslie sat in the dark, he was using ectoplasm. But ectoplasm basically is a substance that came from the medium out of all the medium's orifices, and could be used by the spirit team to produce materializations who these materializations built up out of this substance called ectoplasm. Now, we talk about energy, and that's totally different altogether. And it's not new, because actually I can talk about circles that were using the energy way of working way back in 1926 in Dunedin in New Zealand. So it isn't new, but what is new is the fact that today, through our spirit team, we're able to understand how it works. Whereas back then, people didn't know exactly how the energy type phenomena worked. And what it is, basically, is that there are three types of energy involved. No ectoplasm whatsoever. But it's less dangerous than ectoplasm, because if anybody does anything silly while a deep trance medium is in trance and producing ectoplasm, at the very worst scenario, it could kill them, because the ectoplasm shoots back into the body of the medium and can cause a lot of internal damage. But the new way of working, it is a newer way of working, but still the energies are not new. It's created from three different types of energy. The first type is spirit energy, or spiritual energy, which is brought from the spirit world by the spirit team. The second type of energy is the spiritual energy amongst all the sitters at any particular event. And the third type of energy is natural earth energy, which can be found in columns or spirals, all in various geographical places throughout the world. And if you happen to work in this newer way, and you started a circle to develop physical phenomena using energy, then you can actually draw one of these spirals of earth energy to you. And the three types of energy combined form a creative energy. And it's this creative energy which spirit are then able to use to create phenomena. For instance, there is no way that materialization happens in the old-fashioned way with drapes of ectoplasm. What happens is that a spirit personality is teleported, very much like Star Trek,
Wow.
teleported into the room in which you're sitting. And then mentally, that person, that spirit person, is able to draw on the creative energy, which is stored usually in a glass dome that you keep in the room, able to mentally draw on that to either increase or decrease the amount of solidity to the body, so that they can make themselves totally solid, partially solid, by a mental process. But what's happening is that you've actually got the real spirit person there at the time, as opposed to it's not a doll, but an animated being that's created by ectoplasm. But you actually have the real essence, the real spirit essence of that spirit person there at that time. And I mean, there are times when they will only sort of produce a solid arm. We did a demonstration, or we did several actually, but we did one in California. I think it was 1997 that I remember very, very well, because there was one lady there, and all of our people that were sitting in there were told that they could touch back if they were touched. And this lady was touched by a spirit hand. And just as we told her, she actually touched back. But not only did she touch the hand, which was totally animated, but she sort of put her hand up the arm to feel the spirit person sort of further up. And she had one heck of a shock when she realized that although this arm was totally animated and apparently a normal human arm, you got to the shoulder and the arm, it disappeared. There was nothing beyond that. So, it's sort of, but this is the process that can actually be achieved by any spirit person by a mental process.
Wow. I mean, I can imagine that. So most of the seance was this in complete darkness. So she's feeling this, only feeling it, but not seeing it.
No, she's not seeing it at the time. But I mean, a lot of our sessions, a lot of our experimental sessions, where we had a solid spirit person there, they were very often self-luminous. or there were spirit lights nearby so that they could be seen, or that spirit person would actually hold a spirit light on their hand right under their chin so that you could see the face. And then, of course, there was no sort of mistaking it.
Oh, my goodness. You talk about energy lines.
Yes.
And so I'm very familiar with that type of energy. So when you were doing the skull experiment, were you near one of those lines?
We were actually on the main ley line in the UK. And this ran from St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall, right through the country, up to the coast, and it sort of went through Skull and came out at Lowestoft on the coast. Skull itself was an ancient Roman settlement, which had been called Villa Faustini. And I mean, there'd been Romans there from, right back from the sort of year 100 AD. Wow. And they actually found the barn. It was a farmhouse we were living in at that time, and the barn was sold off to be made into a house. And whilst they were doing that that conversion, they actually found a Roman centurion in the barn. He was then buried in the local churchyard. So it was a very old place, and of course, being called by the Romans Villa Faustini, it actually suggested psychic things going on there. Faust, of course, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I know that from the time you first started until you started to do the skull experiments, how much time was it before you actually started to do that work?
Sorry, from starting, are you saying to when we started to actually get results?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Well, we actually started the group finally in December of 1992. And it was May 1993 before we got any results at all. And in those days, we didn't actually know it was being done with energy. We assumed that it was probably being done with ectoplasm. And we had a spirit trumpet standing on the table, as most circles do when they're sitting for ectoplasmic based. And in the May, on one occasion we were sitting, the trumpet fell off the table and landed on the foot of one of the sitters. Well, that was the very first phenomenon, but it wasn't really significant. But the week afterwards, when we sat there, the same thing happened, but this time we actually watched the spirit trumpet levitate and move gradually down to the floor before it sort of rose again and sat back on the table. So it was more controlled on that second occasion. But after that, we didn't really get any more phenomena until the October. And the very first phenomena we had was an apport of a Churchill crown, which is a coin in the UK. And that was put on there as a sign of better things to come, or greater things to come, I think was the actual expression. And if you read the book, you know that I have a sort of bit of a comradeship with Winnie. And that's been with me, sort of for 44 years, because the very first psychic experience I had on my own, I was doing a night work in Birmingham, and I was ferrying locum doctors around so that if people's doctors were away or playing golf or whatever, a locum doctor would go and sort of do the calls for them. And this was one night when a chap had a heart attack, and he was very ill, and I had to try and navigate the doctor around to this fellow so we could get to him before he passed away. And as we did this, I chose a route that would bisect the road in which he lived, right in the middle, because it's a long road, and there's just a spirit rat just there. And as we got to this sort of junction, I wasn't sure whether to say to the doctor, turn right or turn left. And I was about to say to him, turn right. Well, this was a very dark night. All the houses were dark, and all we had was a powerful flashlight to try and sort out where this chap lived. And as I was about to say, turn right, I clearly heard in my head the voice of Winston Churchill say to me, no, turn left, it's 200 yards on the right. So I said, oh no, let's go left, 200 yards on the right. And it was exactly where the fellow was. and he was saved. And the doctor said 5 minutes later he would have died. And the guy never knew that he'd been saved by Winston Churchill.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! But see, and I love that because you trust what you receive.
Exactly.
The guidance that you receive. I know you and your wife, Sandra, were core members of the group. How many members were in your original circle there?
The Skull Circle started off with 7 members and ended up with 4 through natural people, sort of one reason or another, people leaving. But it was intended, apparently, the spirit team told us that it was originally intended we'd start with 6. And then one dropped out because she was an elderly lady who lived locally, but she was also director of a marine engineering company, which was down in Cardiff, and she had to spend a lot of time away. So she dropped out, and then there were 2 others that drove 90 miles every time they came to a session. And eventually they dropped out, although we'd got some very good phenomena by the time they left. But we ended up with just the core group, we called it, that had 4 of us in it, 2 mediums, Sandra and I. And the 2 mediums, every time we sat, were in deep trance. So they actually sacrificed, their ability to witness this. So in the whole world, there was only Sandra and I who witnessed absolutely everything.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That is very amazing. I also understand that you had scientists there with you too.
We did. This was the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research in the UK. And as soon as they learned that we were getting good phenomena, they asked if they could come. And we always asked our spirit team if they would allow this. And they said yes to these particular people, although very often some of the ones they wanted to bring with them weren't allowed. But that wasn't down to us, that was the spirit team. Mm-hmm. They were the ones that made the decision. So we ended up with 3 scientists. There was Monty Keane, who was an agronomist. There was David Fontana, who was actually the president of the SPR at that time. And there was, oh, crikey, can't remember his name offhand. There were 3 of them. And Arthur Ellison, sorry. I've just been rapped on the hand by spirit to tell me I got that wrong. That was Arthur Ellison. And he was a professor of electronics. These guys sat with us over a period of 2 years on a regular basis, and they wrote up a report afterwards, which was called the Skull Report. It's more scientifically written about our sittings than we would have written ourselves, but it came out as one of the proceedings of the SPR, and it was really a very, very good book indeed. And it's still available actually through there's an organization that's actually constantly printing it, I just can't remember the name that is, but it's still available anyway. If you search the internet, you'll find that it can be bought. But it was they actually came to the conclusion at the end of this book that everything that they'd witnessed was totally genuine, which was so unusual for the SPR. Mostly total skeptics where physical phenomena is concerned. And these 3 guys really endorsed what we were doing. Wow.
And I was going to ask you if that's something that they typically would do. I mean, if they're skeptical, so.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is that it's not normally likely that you would actually get an endorsement from such people. But they were so convinced that it was absolutely spot on. Wow. It wasn't really perhaps what you might call the tightest amount of security there as far as they were concerned, but they were happy that there was no way that all of those phenomena could have been done fraudulently in any way, shape or form. And that was also endorsed by somebody who'd been one of the top stage magicians in the UK. And there was absolutely no doubt in our minds we would have been total idiots to waste our time sort of sitting there and trying to pretend all this was going on. But it was just so amazing. They had so much phenomena in so many different ways.
How many years did this experiment go on, and did you record everything?
Every session of the skull experiment was recorded. Those tapes at the moment are currently being digitized in Switzerland. And we hope at some point in the future, when we have our new center that will be run by the Spiritual Science Foundation, which we've just formed, that there will be a library there where people can actually study some of the sittings that went on there.
That will be beautiful. And I did want to bring that up because I know that there's a Facebook page as well
Yes.
about it. Is it the Skull, the Final Project?
That's right. Yeah, that's one that I sort of put up there really fairly recently. At the same time that I sort of started this crowdfunding site. And that was done purely and simply because I had a sitting with Sandy Ingham. And she was so good and so evidential that all of this was coming directly from Spirit. And we just simply did exactly what Spirit asked us to do. And it's really rolling forwards now.
Oh, my God.
We already have 114 members in the Spiritual Science Foundation, looking for a few more. You know, we already have, I think, there's nearly £3,000 been donated in the Just Giving. So we're going in the right direction.
That is beautiful. And I love Sandy. I love her work. I love it.
She's a fantastic lady, yes.
She is. And I did interview her, and it was beautiful, just so beautiful. So when the type of experiments that you performed in the school experiment, what type of experiences or experiments did you do? I believe that there was film, and I know the apports and things like that. Could you explain a little bit about the film?
Yes, the films sort of were really three phases, basically. The first of these was where we started to sort of bring films, 35mm films, into the sittings in a camera, loaded into a camera, but films that had never been used previously. And they would be brought in in the dark. And Spirit would sometimes say to us, or sometimes to Sandra, pick up the camera. Whenever I say now, take a picture, which she did. And then the following week, we brought in 2 cameras. And again, she was asked to take a picture every time that the Spirit person said now, which she did. And the second camera levitated by itself and moved around the room taking pictures by itself until it was empty. And then when all of these things were developed down at the local film place, we really didn't believe in the first instance that it was our film, because each of the films had 11 different frames on it, totally different things, all taken in the dark. So the films had never been exposed to any light whatsoever. And there were 11 amazing things on each of the 3 films. So the only way that we were absolutely sure that it was our film was the fact that we had loaded it in the house. And the first shot, which was taken purely and simply to move the film on, was of the garden outside. So all of this was amazing stuff. And then we actually got in touch. We started to put out some flat Polaroid films, and we were getting some results on those in the group. So we thought it might be a good idea to actually get in touch with the Polaroid organization. And they had a place in the UK, which we went to see them. And they were very, very kind and donated many of these Polaroid 35mm films to us, which were blooming expensive films, actually. And we had about 150 of these films donated to us, plus a little device that would actually develop them on the spot. So we started using 35mm films in that way. These were slide films originally. So we have a most fantastic sort of collection of slides that came through from those films. And that was the second phase where this was sort of happening. And then the Spirit people said to us, look, we don't want you to put them in a camera at all. We want them just standing on the table. So we actually didn't take them out of their shop wrapping. And we stood them still coiled on the table. And then gradually we found that there were more and more pictures being put on the films. And eventually, some of the films that we had there measured up to 4 feet long with all sorts of different things on them. And it was, it was quite amazing. And then finally, we had a good friend who was a Swiss businessman, and he donated a video camera for us. And we started taking film with the video camera. And our spirit team wanted us to start a project called Project Alice, which was all about the video camera being lined up in the dark, but pointing into a mirror, which pointed towards another mirror, and they gave us a special setup. And eventually, we were getting animated pictures, not only of the spirit world, but also of other dimensions, which included UFOs and beings from other worlds.
That is very interesting. When I read about that, and you look at all the pictures. I mean, look on YouTube, look in the books that he has. There's photos of the images that they captured. It's amazing. And for you to say that UFOs or higher evolved beings or extraterrestrials, that makes me think. It just really makes you think about how you captured this. How did that information or those images get on there? So it's amazing.
It just shows that nothing is impossible for spirit.
Yes.
And on other occasions while we were sitting down there, we actually had a miniature UFO actually arrived and flew around the room, and it was lit from inside with little portholes, and it sat in the air in front of each and every one of us so we could examine it. And that was quite amazing. And not only that, but we actually had a being, an otherworld being, who we call Blue, because we captured his picture on film, and he was blue. And he actually came in solid form into the room, stood in front of us, picked up our hands, put them on his head so we could feel that he wasn't human. And we were allowed to sort of feel across his face to know that he wasn't. But, from that little fella, he was quite small, about 4 feet 6 tall. And you could feel a wall of love. When he was in there, you could feel this wonderful wall of love that came straight towards you. I mean, it was very much a physical thing.
Oh, my goodness. I like to use the term for, instead of extraterrestrials, I like to call them higher evolved beings. Because
we always call them stellar friends, yes.
Ooh, I love that one. I love that. When you started doing the film, the film experiments, did you get immediate results, or did that take time?
No, the first ones I was talking to you about with the cameras, that was pretty much immediate. But after that, the other types of film that we were using, it took time. They had to sort of sort it out. And they used to have departments. I mean, they had a film department in there. They had a department that did the apports. They had an department that did the voices. It's sort of so many different departments.
You know what? I love this because you called it the skull experiment. You experimenting with spirit, but actually, I think it's spirit also experimenting with you. And so coming together with that collective energy. I think they're always doing that. I think they're continually doing that, trying to see what they can achieve from their side, and us doing that with the same way.
Very much so, yes.
I wanted to talk about, you've talked about it a few times. Listening to your guides, listening to the spirit people, giving you direction, telling you who should be there. I mean, I do that. I ask my team, should I meet this person or should I connect with this person? Because they're going to know, they're going to guide me, and I'm going to listen. So I love how you're guided. You asked your team, questions and what you're allowed to share from your experiments.
Well, that's it exactly. And of course, we always took their advice. We found with the spirit team, they never ever demanded. And it's not the way that spirit work. If anybody in a circle, any guide in a circle is demanding, there's something not right there. They can advise, they can request that you do this, or they can advise that you do it this way. But they never demand anything. But we always took their advice. And if they asked us for something, then we got it for them. And because of the fact that we did work with them so closely, we got the results.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. I mean, I really believe in asking questions, asking spirit questions, and and listening to their advice,
Yeah.
I wanted to, you feel like this was a predestined experience for you. Can you talk
Very
a
much.
little bit about that?
I mean, I think we've sort of really learnt that very much since Skull. I mean, we were told at Skull by our spirit guides, and they were so dear to us. We loved them. They were very much like our family. And they explained to us that we had actually volunteered to come back to Earth at this time in this particular life to do this particular job. And the end of Skull is not the end of the job that we're trying to do. We still want to continue with that. And we're told that there will be more phenomena. So in a way, Skull is being reactivated, hopefully at this new centre, which is going to be a new centre studying physical mediumship, physical phenomena. And we hope that it'll probably be, or we think that it'll probably be the only one of its type in the world, and where we're really getting involved in this very, very close-knit group of people who are into physical mediumship.
I like how you said that. So your team, the spirits, told you that this is something that you agreed to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the short straw. So we had to come back and do the job.
I actually believe that because, if you're connected to, the life purpose that you're supposed to do here, and sometimes you might get those visions, sometimes you might get that information from spirit, and sometimes you just have this knowing that there's something that you have to do here. And with you, it just seemed like it was natural. All the steps from having that first experience with your son, and then leading you into every step that you had to do. And I believe you also taught between all of that, teaching others.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's been a big part of it. The thing is, they said, our spirit team has said to us, well, look, you are probably some of the most experienced people in this type of thing in the world. So we would like you to teach other people. And that's exactly what we've tried to do all along.
Yeah, I think that you continually do that because you have all the different websites. You have so much information out there. Your current work, I know that, I've actually shared that in the group this morning. I wanted, people to get connected to that because I believe it's beautiful to preserve all this information, all the documents, all the recordings, everything, and put that in one place. I feel like one of the reasons why I'm doing this is that, there's so much information in different areas. I love that in your physical mediumship for you, you also offer a guide that you can purchase to help with energy-based physical mediumship. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, where is that, can we purchase that?
Absolutely. Well, that particular guide was literally dictated for us by our spirit team. So everything in that guide is exactly what spirit asked us to give to other people so they could do a similar thing. I think it's about 72 pages long in total. And that is available for anybody that's interested. That's actually available from our website, www.skullexperiment.com.
And that's going to be beautiful because, again, the reason why I started this group was that I wanted a lot of information in one place for people that are trying to develop, have, go to sources, get documents, get books to help them with that development. Because a lot of times people sit and they're just sitting and they have no idea what they're doing. And so
it's very difficult for people that start if they don't have any guidance at all. But that website I've just given you actually for that guide is also the only website where you can buy my second book, Witnessing the Impossible, because I'd self-published that, and that's now on that website as well.
Oh, that's going to be beautiful. And again, like I do want to direct people there because they have a lot of questions. How do I start this? What would you recommend to somebody starting a circle? Is harmony between group members important?
Yeah, I mean that's actually vital. If you haven't got the harmony, then you really won't get the phenomena. It's very, very important indeed. You've got to have that love and harmony between the people in your group. And we would recommend also to people that you never really start off with more than about 6. 6 is a good number. 4, if you've got people that are really closely connected, is even better. But sort of if you've got the closeness, if you've got the love in there, if you've got the commitment in there, the dedication in there, and you're all passionate about the work that you're doing, then you will really achieve. And the newer way of working with energy rather than ectoplasm, phenomena can happen within months rather than within years.
Okay, that's beautiful to know, because a lot of people think that they might just have, sit for, 2 times and expect to have that experience.
Yeah, and it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yes.
But also another advantage of this new way of working is that it is not dangerous. It's not dangerous to the mediums. It's not dangerous to the sitters. And working with ectoplasm is very, very dangerous for the medium. With ectoplasm, you generally have just one medium who goes into a deep trance. And in deep trance, that person is very vulnerable. But with this, nobody needs to go into a deep trance. But if they do, they're totally protected. And if anyone does anything stupid whilst a phenomena is going on that's been done in an energy-based way, the phenomena stops. That's it. End of. Nobody's hurt. Nothing happens. But the phenomena stops.
That's
and then you collar the idiot that's done it and kick them out.
I think, you know what, with the ectoplasmic energy, that is something that's going to take a lot of time. And it does have that danger aspect to it. The way you're talking about, I think it's like probably the better way then to attempt that physical circle. Very,
very much, and the thing is that everybody sitting in that room is a part of it. Is that, if you have ectoplasm, basically there's one medium and you're all trying to give energy to that medium for the phenomena that happens. But basically, where you have an energy-based group, everybody in that group is actually giving energy for the phenomena. And it happens as a result of all of you. So you're all the medium. There's not one particular person normally that is the medium in there. I mean, in our case at Skoll, it was different. We had the 2 people that really sacrificed their opportunities to witness it because they were in deep trance, but they were in deep trance really to give us instructions and advice, not necessarily for the phenomena. The phenomena was all of us were sort of giving energy into that phenomena. So, it's sort of, and now there are very few people sort of going into deep trance. And we find that a lot of the work in a group that's developing now is probably done through channeling, where there is no deep trance involved, but a light trance.
Mm-hmm. I actually love that, the idea that everybody is involved. And when you mentioned getting the advice from your spirit team, and that information would come through the mediums in deep trance. Yeah. And is that how you actually, whenever you needed advice or guidance, that you would get it that way from them?
Well, that's exactly how it worked, actually, when we were at Skoll. That's right, yeah.
Wow. Okay, and I love that. I love the thought of everybody coming together and experiencing that phenomena. So I'm super excited about trying that. I really am.
Well, I think the thing is, provided you've got those elements that I mentioned, the 3 things: dedication, commitment, and passion, yes, to do it. There's no reason why anybody couldn't actually get it developed. But you've got to have patience as well. I'll add that in there because it isn't going to happen overnight. No. You have to understand that instead of spending 12 years to develop, like Leslie Flint did, you will probably get good phenomena within a year. But it's going to take anything up to that year.
Wow. But you know what? I like how you said passion, because really you have to have that passion. You have to want to do this. You have to want to sit and meet regularly. Is it advisable? I mean, with your work, were you there every week? I mean, when did you meet? How did you meet?
Well, we normally sat twice a week at Skoll, except that there were occasions when we sat 3 times. And in my current group, there's 5 of us that we have, and 3 people come twice a week, and Sandra and I sit once a week on our own. So we sit 3 times a week at the moment as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's really commitment, especially if you're sitting 2 or 3 times a week as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've read that you are also channeling now. Is that something that you're currently doing?
Yeah, that is actually happening. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to share any of that with anybody at this point in time. But we're very hopeful that we might share more than that once we get the centre open and running.
Oh my goodness, that will be so exciting to hear. Robin, I'm so glad that you came on today. I mean, it was a time, because I know you were like, I reached out to you through Sandra, or Sandy, I'm sorry, Sandy, and you were on vacation and everything was like, you know, all these different things. And then finally I got you in. I was so super excited. But I'm so grateful to you for taking your time out and sharing your experience of your work, your life's work. And
Very welcome.
Continuing on. I am definitely going to make sure to put out all that information about your current project, the final project.
Yes, and the thing also, if we could sort of get people to join the Spiritual Science Foundation, which will be running the centre, and the cost of joining the Spiritual Science Foundation is only €20 a year. It's very, very small cost.
And that's beautiful. But you know what? I also almost forgot. There's actually, isn't there a movie about to come out or being made about this?
Well, I can't give you too much information about it, but I can say that it does look very encouraging that it probably will happen.
Oh, that's going to be wonderful. I mean, I can't wait for that. I sure hope that we find out about that and your current work with channeling soon. Super excited about that.
Excellent.
Robin, thank you so very much for being with us and sharing your purpose and your life's work with us. And
oh, you're very, very welcome. Yeah.
You have a fabulous rest of your day in beautiful Spain. Oh, how I wish I could see that beautiful country. And thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hopefully we speak again sometime.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.